Welcome back to the Masters of Materium, and today we're going to cover all of the highlights from the most recent AMA video. I gotta say, I'm so grateful they're doing these AMAs and keep us up to date. It's fun to see how the sausage is made. So Grill has clipped all the best parts, and we're going to watch it and then give you our commentary. So Grill, roll the footage.
Yeah, let's do this. So the first clip here shows how they added some directional AI improvements or interface improvements for damage and some hit indicators of mobs, like if something was hit or resists or is vulnerable. So let's go check that out.
So some of this stuff was in the tech test. I'll call out that these are also both built to support our damage types. There's a lot of good feedback that's going to be required for that, for vulnerable, resistant, and these are built in. Oh, they're showing them. Awesome.
That's cool.
So you have the double line.
Dude, that's cool.
Yeah, if you guys don't know, the vulnerable resistance states are going to be very, very core to our gameplay. So getting this stuff up and running is going to be a big boon.
There we go. That's it.
That's rad.
Awesome.
So what it looks like based on that footage is going to be like regular damage, resistance damage, and then vulnerable damage. So it seems like they've put hit boxes, or Elam, do you think that it's specific types of attacks against specific types of creatures? You know, how do you think this is going to play out?
From what I'm seeing there, well, you can see a few things. You can see the different colors. Like sometimes there's a red crescent and sometimes it's a white crescent. It almost seems that when mobs are attacking, they tend to be more vulnerable. And also when the mobs are running away, they tend to be vulnerable as well. So I think the state of the mob and potentially their direction towards you has some effect as well. Certainly the damage type would make sense also, whether you're doing a melee attack or if you're shooting with a bow or potentially using a particular spell type or element class, that sort of thing. So they can go quite deep with this. I'm a little surprised and quite pleasantly surprised, I should say, that they're doing this. I wasn't expecting them to go into this level of detail into the actual damaging effects.
Grill, as a tank or MMORPG player, do you like this kind of data? Do you think it's really helpful and gives the skilled players an edge?
Yeah, I think in a first-person game, it's almost necessary. Things can be pretty hectic sometimes. If you don't know what direction damage is coming from, if you get hit from behind, I mean, even in the playtest, I had a few instances where I got hit from behind. I didn't even know it at first, and all of a sudden you're basically dead. I wasn't expecting the vulnerable stuff or the resistant stuff either. I do think that is a nice change. I think that really allows people to min-max their gameplay.
Nice, yeah. No, I think it's going to give players a lot more information, and also as a guild, we'll have to figure out which attacks are resistant or which ones give max damage and really create strategies around that. So I love that. All right, next clip, more arrow and cemetery stuff, right, Grill?
Yeah, there's more, some more information on arrows and cemeteries. Pretty similar to the last AMA, but you can see they made a few minor upgrades.
We've got 3 changes I want to talk about today. Probably the most obvious one will be this arrow showing up on the bow. I know it's been very confusing because I added ammo, and when you have no ammo, you can't shoot, but you still have that arrow on the bow. So I have fixed that now. That's probably not in the build that was sent out, but it'll be in build soon. But you can see that I'm about to shoot my last arrow here, and there's no arrow on the bow, and my character realized that and had another stack of arrows in the inventory and put that in. You can see that transition there. Next change I want to show you is that shatter now arrows now properly shatter based on the material they hit. So on rock, I think it's 100% actually, that they're just going to shatter. If you shoot it into the ground, into the dirt, they're not going to shatter. And wood is sometimes. And that's the server determining that. And when goblins shoot arrows at you, they get the same kind of determination. So that's all synchronized, working
That's
properly.
awesome.
Yeah. We can't pick them up yet, but that's in the plans eventually. And then the last change I want to talk about is this has been coming, but you can go to this cemetery. Imagine a beautiful cemetery made by an artist and not by a programmer like me. But we've got this slab for now. You can go up to this. It says press F to interact at the bottom. This is kind of the starting beginnings of a building shop. No designer has taught me or told me what to do here, but this will all get fixed up. I think Todd's going to be doing that. But right now, this is basically a mechanism to say, hey, I want to respawn at this cemetery. And that comes in the form of this revive charm that you get. And you can see in the tooltip here, it says, if one resurrects you at Narrow's Landing. This is part of the core loop that Don was talking about. This is not implemented fully the way that we're going to be doing it. But right now, if I do a little hacky hack and I just say die, and I just pretend I got killed by a goblin or something, this is what's going to happen so far. You restart the game, which isn't actually restarting the game anymore. You get to keep your stuff. That might change, not sure. But now I'm going to respawn right where I bought that charm at this cemetery in Narrow's Landing. And you can see my health and energy are at 25%. And I still have all my stuff. So that's kind of the free revive. You might actually get reset on the free revive, I'm not sure yet, but that's partway progress to the core loop death revive stuff.
Well, the death loop is coming, which is exciting. So there was the auto loading of arrows. I thought that was a cool feature. If you run out of arrows, but you have more in your inventory, reloads those, dealing goblin arrows, kind of interesting. And then I also thought the stamina and health points at 25% is interesting. So, hopefully you don't respawn back into a death area and just die, come back, die a few times. Because if the cemetery is loaded with creatures, that could definitely happen. Yellum, thoughts?
Yeah, typically in most MMOs, when you get resurrected with all your buffs gone, low health and low mana or energy or whatever. So your most vulnerable period for dying again is typically just after getting resurrected. So, which is pretty nasty, to be honest with you, especially if there's significant cost to it. But that's pretty typical in most MMOs. With regards to the actual arrows, I couldn't tell from the video, but it's something they mentioned in a previous video is that your bow will not auto-load arrows of a different type. It'll only give you more arrows to the quiver of the same type. So if you're holding on to some special arrows for, say, a boss or whatever, those won't automatically get used up on you shooting at rocks and that sort of thing.
Grill, do you think that when players die, they should lose their stuff but be able to go back and pick it up? What would you do as a game designer?
I've seen that design in RPG games. And in MMO, that could be tough. Why if you die in the middle of a dungeon and you have to go back and there's no one to help you? Your stuff is pretty much lost. I don't really think that works in MMO. I think there should be some penalties for death, stats or mastery or whatever. You should definitely have to pay to get your health bar and stamina bar back up. I think that having to retrieve your gear is probably a bit too punishing. I've been punished in Valheim, but that game is a little more RPG-like than MMO to some extent. I think in a game like Mirandus, that'd be pretty brutal, and the game is brutal as is. The interesting thing about the charms, I wonder if those are going to be unique, or could you just buy them from different locations and wind up almost like death teleporting to different areas by equipping different charms? Like you could go someplace far away, equip a revive charm, far from your current location and just teleport death hack back to the other area.
Elam, are we going to get banned for that exploit?
If I did that exploit, I'd get banned in a second without any question.
You're probably already banned for that. Come on.
Yeah, probably. I didn't even do it yet, and I'm probably banned for who knows.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know what we're joking about, we were Elam was playing Legacy, and there was a bug in the game that he didn't know it was a bug because he doesn't visit Discord anymore, and anyways got booted for a few days. So that's the joke there. Which, you know what? I mean, just to give a rant there for 60 seconds. In my opinion, the game developers should be rewarding people for finding exploits, right? Because you find the exploits, then of course the devs will patch it. They'll make it better, fix it, whatever. Instead of punishing players for exploiting the things, they should really encourage finding them and reward them. All right, let's get into some more exciting footage here, Grill.
Yeah, so up next, there is some algorithm or AI improvements, whatever you want to call them, to how some of the creatures of the world will spawn.
The simplest way of explaining it is basically spawning things more randomly in the world. So we don't have, every time you start the game, you know exactly, here is where the deer are, here is where the goblins are at. But instead, more random. Most of the rules are about what enemies or what mobs need to exist for the more rare mobs to spawn, and how often things can spawn, and how many we can have, and max numbers of this and that. And that's one part. And the other part is where things want to spawn. So we still have way more wolves and goblins, unfortunately, since they're now are not friends, but both of those prefer to spawn in caves, and also around fireplaces. Let's see. Yeah, and it's all, yeah. So here is grassland will spawn more deer, and all of this is just a bunch of CSV files. So now you can kind of change what spawns where. One of the next things we'll do is to make sure that the terrain have proper materials that have tags, so that more of this spawning can happen based on the geography, basically. The less of manual putting spawn points in the world, the better. It still works in conjunction with the traditional or the previous generation of the spawner, so we can still have very controlled places, like we could have a mother encounter or something like that, but the general wildlife and all that stuff is much more unpredictable.
Can be good and bad as well. I was working through that.
Absolutely. So what you guys saw there at the very end was the brand new dynamic harvestable system that Jonas actually got working yesterday. Awesome. So a big part of that is making it so that harvestables in the previous tech test were actually just part of the level, and you can walk up to the same tree every time and hit the same F key, and you get to the same stuff out of it. And now those dynamic harvestables they're being spawned according to the spawn rules. You can walk up to them. You can basically harvest them, and right now it's one hit and it's done. But it deletes it, and other players in the zone see it go away the same way you do. So it's a fully networked object, and that is one of the reasons that I'm working on network level of detail, because we can't afford to send that much data.
Interesting. So first of all, I'm a big fan of just randomizing as much as possible, just to keep things interesting, less predictable, more dopamine. And yeah, the dynamic harvestable system is really different than I expected, because randomizing the creatures makes sense, but it sounds like all the raw resources are going to be highly randomized, which is going to make collecting them a lot more challenging and difficult. So, Ilum, thoughts?
They didn't give enough details for me to fully comment, but I can compare a little bit, at least to WoW. So in WoW, you have partial and or full dynamic spawning of resources. So let's say you go to a zone. There's set locations where nodes can spawn, and there's a percent probability of that node spawning a certain type of mineral or resource. However, it also records the location and total number of nodes of that type in other places. So let's say I get a super rare node that I spawn, then nowhere else in the zone will spawn that for typically a period of time. Now, I don't know how dynamic these spawns are, whether they'll have set locations and you'll loot one and then maybe an hour later it'll respawn in that same place in a predictable pattern, or if they can literally spawn along any area that they're designated in. The important part with such a spawning system is that it makes it much harder for bots to be programmed to effectively mine or gather these resources, which is quite good for the economy in general. The other thing is it adds more sense of adventure, and sometimes you have to go into some rare areas. It just makes the entire experience more important. Now, the other thing he mentioned was you only have to hit this once. So that does suggest that they'll have nodes that you'll hit multiple times, or potentially the exemplars, say like a glimmering clan or a hollower or something, maybe they're more effective at mining it and they can hit it more times, or they just mine it faster and then it mines out, or the actual node itself has a different amount of resources in it that can be mined each time. So they can go quite deep with this, and I'm interested to see kind of the direction that they take.
Yeah, like what you said there with the dwarves. Grill, thoughts?
Pretty much agree with you guys. I like the change. It's more WoW-like, or more like other MMOs where I've played, where when things are random, it definitely adds kind of that sense of I found buried treasure, that kind of excitement. It also creates a lot more competition, because now you have people out searching for these nodes instead of everyone just kind of sitting by one and farming it over and over and over again until they get what they want.
Ilum, do you think farming is going to be dynamic like that? Like where it's going to be maybe not as unpredictable, but somewhat unpredictable? Would that be weird as a farmer?
So the only thing I can say specifically about farming is that your plots are going to be in specific areas. So unlike the nodes, it would be really strange if you had your 5x5 farming plot and then suddenly your crop, when you go to harvest, it spawns somewhere down the road and in like a large armor shop or something. So it would be much more difficult to make a farm dynamic, because that's your own personal space and it's going to be assigned based on kind of the way that you plant your crops and such. Will there be some dynamic aspects to it? Like they could have randomized timers potentially to mix things up a little bit. Maybe some random events that change the timers, or maybe you have to like add extra water or whatever. But I think there will be some randomization and or dynamic effect to it, but given the fact that the location is fixed, that greatly decreases the ability for that to really come into effect.
Hopefully we don't get freak snowstorms that kill all of our crops. Ilum and I dealt enough with that growing up in Canada. All right, next clip, which is absolutely one of my favorite parts of this MA. So let's get into it, Grill.
Yeah, next clip is some improvements on creature AI. So let's get right into it, like you said.
This month, there's a lot of new AI behavior that you all see. It's still very much a work in progress, very, very rough, very chaotic. But we added hunting. And what that means is that goblins and wolves don't like each other. They can hunt prey, and you'll see that. We have some placeholder animations for drinking, eating, and sleeping. And that means that the deer, rabbits, and the wolves understand that they should do those things. The way I'm simulating that right now is that we have some timers for hunger, thirst, and fatigue that I basically just stuck some data in there, and those count down. And when they get thirsty, they want to go drink. When they get hungry, they want to go hunt or go find food to eat. And obviously, when they get tired, they want to go find a place to sleep. So we're tying into the tag system for all that stuff, like we've done over the last month or so. And finally added a debug visualizer for all NPCs in your vicinity, so you can tell what they're doing, and that's in the console/debug NPC on or off, and people have been using that. So yeah, go ahead and show the video, please. Behaviors: here are some deer resting and eating, goblins eating a kill, wolves hunting a rabbit to kill and eat.
That's Love it.
Goblin chasing after a wolf to kill it and eat it, or hunting.
Oh my god, I'm watching a BBC. I feel like I'm watching BBC right now.
It's so much fun.
Planet Earth.
Bird's eye, just watch
Mirandus.
this stuff. Yeah.
They do
Wolves
travel in flocks.
going to the lake to drink some water.
Anybody got a good British impression?
Getting distracted by deer to hunt. And finally, wolves returning to their den to get some rest.
That's awesome.
That's so cool.
Thank you all very much.
Nice. Very nice.
Good job. That's awesome.
Yeah, I love this. I mean, first of all, you're basically going to be able to get on top of a cliff and just watch the whole world simulate reality, which is awesome. Couple of comments. One, sleeping attacks will be possible now. So that's going to be good for mum sends and maybe never looks, sneak up on a wolf and at least get the first shot in before they they wake up. The other thing too is we could probably steal kills, right? So if goblins are fighting wolves and everybody's a little bit damaged, we could just jump in there and kill them a lot faster and easier. So, Alan, thoughts?
Well, we all know about stealing kills, that's for sure. Few things interesting. So when you're talking about going in and attacking someone who's asleep, that could be part of their vulnerable state that we saw in an earlier clip, and you'd likely potentially do some, additional damage while the mob is in such a state. Other than the fact that you can get in and get the attacks in before they can attack you. But with regards to them chasing other mobs and stuff, it makes sense. It's logical that you would see that in the real world. It looks kind of cool as well. It makes the world feel more lively. On the downside, of course, if you're trying to hunt, say, deers, and there's a lot of wolves in the area that are eating all the deers, it could be a little hard for you to farm that particular type of animal, in which case you would have to go out of your way and probably kill off all the wolves so that the deers can kind of spawn again. That would add more dynamic effect to the general environment, but will make you potentially have to go out of your way to accomplish whatever task it is that you're looking to accomplish at that time.
Grill, you like it?
Yeah, I agree. Definitely seems like the world is kind of living at that point, or at this point now, with everything interacting with each other. I do see some potential for abuse, but maybe that's okay too. Maybe it's not really abuse. Maybe that's how they want things to work. But I do like the lively, living feel to what we saw in that clip there.
Yeah, the simulation is coming to life. All right, next clip. I think it's another AI video from an overhead shot.
Yeah, it's more of what we just kind of saw and discussed, but it was a cool clip anyway. I thought we would include it. They seem to really like it as well.
There's a wolf running for his life from a goblin. The goblin identifies easier prey and switches to the deer, and eventually kills it.
Remember, guys, that deer could be you. You could be the easier prey.
I don't have to be fastest, but I do have to be faster than you.
Yeah, that was awesome. All right, I don't think we need to comment on that, and then we can jump to the next one.
Up next, we have updates to the Exemplar and NPC models.
We've been working hard, harder than you might ever expect, to make sure that the right look for our exemplars is what we end up with. Something that doesn't detract, something that still feels rooted in reality, but has to be stylized to a lower polyform. We also had to invent our female cast, like Jason talked about earlier. you're going to get to choose your gender. And so far, we've only had a single selection. So we've overhauled the entire thing from concept all the way through all these final models. This is the first time you get to see them all together. And yeah, here they all are. And so this has been a big effort. And now we're working on integrating these guys into the game. We've also been going back through. We had some stand-in goblins that you guys have gotten to play test, but we had aspirations that they'd be a little more severe, a little more interesting. And so we overhauled them. And the rest of this is weapons. There's more to this in the video, but there's a ton of weapons that we're going to be dumping into the game under Don's supervision, of course. Mm-hmm. And gear. So rather than just the few things that you guys have had access to in the past, there's going to be a lot more gear opportunities to explore inside of Mirandus. And so here's a few. Yeah, oh my God. Yeah. The Prince Valiant. You have to pay Materium to get better hairstyles. That's it. That's just. But yeah, tons of updates coming for what's going to be possible, what's going to be accessible in the game for gear and weapons and everything else.
First of all, I'm a fan of the thick female dwarf. Shields look really cool. And as far as just the facial design, actually reminds me, I was a huge He-Man fan as a kid and had all the He-Man dolls. So the facial designs kind of remind me of the artistic design style of He-Man. So I'm a fan. I like it. Caleb?
Yeah, no, it seems decent. I have nothing particularly negative to say by any means. I'm happy that they're allowing you to choose the different sexes. And an interesting thing they were commenting in the actual, when they were talking, they said it almost sounds like when you log in with your Exemplar, you could be male one time, and then the next time you want to log in with the same Exemplar, it could be female. I'm not sure if that's what they plan to do when it goes live or not, but it'd be kind of strange if it did. Certainly for the upcoming play test, I could see that and just kind of test out different things. But like I said, it would be a little bit odd if you're getting a sex change every time you log in and log out.
Well, one day you're identifying as a man, the other day as a female. You know, that's how the world is these days, right? Grill, thoughts, comments.
Sounds like the surgeons of Mirandus is going to be quite busy and lucrative. Yeah, no, gear looks great. Models look great. This is something they just keep improving on with every one of these AMAs. Happy with the progress. I can't wait to get geared up again. It's like one of the most exciting things about playing RPGs and MMOs. So yeah, no, I'm really happy with the direction they're going.
All right, next clip.
Next clip, we have animation updates. Let's go take a look.
I think it's the next thing that's coming up. Oh, no, sorry. Here's a couple of animation explorations into casting and what that can feel like first person and third person. Sorry, there's a bunch of experiments that are all sort of inside this thing together. Also, so far, our faces have been stone-faced because we haven't had any rig in there. But now we are going to get a rig, so we'll be able to express and even map it to voices eventually. Here's the goblins I was talking about. This is an animation test where we took those models and we sliced them up real quick and gave them to the animation team so they could start putting the kind of attitude onto these things that we're really looking for. So I think this is just going to be chilling to see these things moving around in the final environment. Certainly a departure from where we've been, which has been good. It's been a useful test, but I think this is a big improvement on the way that they're going to feel. And like we said before, these are literally just the videos we take when we're sharing them internally with the team. So these aren't final. These are explorations. This is us testing out the way things will feel and look. Like eventually that hand will grasp that weapon. But the gross movements are what we focus on at this phase. Mm-hmm.
This guy's big.
Yeah, he's huge. He's huge, and he's going to be intimidating to deal with.
I think it's the biggest creature we put in so far.
Yeah.
It's a lot bigger than the brute from the previous deck test.
It makes the brute look silly. Like
Brute was silly, man. It was weird. Come on.
First of all, I think it's critical that magic looks amazing and it's got to be cool. So really happy to see them work on that. And it's interesting to see them model the brute style on gorillas. Right? Obviously they use silverback gorillas as I think their main inspiration there. Elam, thoughts?
So a little interesting when they started showing the actual spell animations. Kind of looked like they were first off in the top left one looked like she was going Super Saiyan, and the one below that looks like she was about to cast a Kamehameha wave. So I almost get a little bit of Dragon Ball inspiration that they're getting there. Those big heavy goblins or hobgoblins potentially are going to be pretty impressive, and if they're bigger than say the mega brutes based on the size of comparison of the smaller ones there, then they're going to be pretty intimidating for sure. I can only imagine what we can see. Like initially in the playtest when we were all using arrows, we had like 50-60 people shooting one of those mega brutes once with arrows. One of these big guys, I can picture like 100 people firing at them in a large raid. It'd be interesting to see for sure.
Grill, you like it?
Love it. Especially the bigger the creatures, the better it is for range DPS, right? You have less of a chance of your shots being blocked. It's interesting to say that's the biggest thing they've put into the game so far. I wonder if that means that it's bigger than I can't remember if it was like an ogre or a troll from the third play test that was kind of by the cave or campfire area. If it's bigger than that, that thing's going to be just absolutely massive and terrifying.
King Kong, just a good new show on Apple. The Monarchs, it's like Godzilla and all the creatures. It's pretty good. Alrighty, next clip.
Next clip was the updates on the visual effects.
It was always silly. It was always silly.
Okay, now hold on. I got to talk about this. We are not having Death Walk.
These are just experiments. Yeah, like I was saying, these are just visual experiments.
You would be in the purgatory space in this case.
Purgatory space.
Yeah.
Purgatory space. Right.
Yeah. But tunable post-processing is really,
that's the thing to pay attention to as we're exploring like what's going to be possible. How we use different techniques is still totally, up for grabs.
But I like the idea that it could look that way in Purgatory, or maybe even get a glimpse at the cemetery before you respawn and have it look like that as well.
Yeah, maybe the moment right before respawn. Yeah, that would be wonderful. Lots of effects tests as we're figuring out a number of things. How do we explain what's happening, but how do we also land the visual style to make sure that it's consistent with all the other things that we're putting into the game? So there's a number of things that we're trying to juggle as we explore what our effects will look like. And always it's a balance between keeping it feeling natural. Like we don't want a lot of things that feel too gamey. So we want to make sure it feels integrated into the rest of the ecosystem that we have.
These are all just so pretty.
Yeah, G's awesome.
Oh yeah, and big props to G Lush. He's our effects artist, and like he created this entire water system from scratch for us, and it's just a lot. I mean, it's a huge endeavor, and he makes it look simple.
Yeah, this was one of the most interesting clips for me. First, I'm assuming the purgatory means we're dead and we haven't resurrected and maybe we can walk around. It's a question. I really like the resurrection animations. And a question I have is like, what's on the description was saying Materium blob. Does that mean we paid Materium fee to resurrect and the animation's different and the water movement and the water just looks incredible. So Elam, thoughts on all that?
So a few things. So first off, the kind of the death walk. You've seen that in multiple games, but the one is probably most commonly known is in World of Warcraft. If you die in World of Warcraft, in most cases you enter a purgatory where everything is kind of whitish and you don't really see anybody around you unless you're close to your body. And then once you make it back to your body, you can resurrect, or you resurrect from a spirit trainer, which would be kind of like more the equivalent of resurrecting at, say, a cemetery. And upon resurrecting there, you have some sort of penalty, and there's a cost with it due to damage to your armor and such. So there's some relevance, and I'm guessing there's some inspiration taken from that as well. The water and stuff and the way they're working that, I'm finding that looks really quite good. The other thing that's kind of interesting, when they were showing all those different spell animations and such there, the model that they were using was the original model from their very, very first model, which was the same model that they would have had in the art screenshots, like the Mirandus NFT arts, like Road to Adventure and stuff. So it's been a long time, probably 3 years since I've seen them actually use that model.
Yeah, it might be actually old content internally. Grill, thoughts?
Looks good. Again, steady improvements on all this stuff. The spell details look good. As much as I want all these ridiculously pretty and big and grand spell details, they do have to be careful a bit, because if this is too much, it becomes a little distracting and hard to see sometimes. I don't know if you've ever played FF14 or anyone that's played FF14. The spell detail in that game was just huge and bright, to the point where there was actually an option to turn that stuff off for other players, because you could not see your own spellcast in game if you didn't do that in a large enough raid. So I get why they've mentioned before that they don't want to go too big on that. The water, like you guys mentioned, looks great. It's also kind of cool to see how they're actually putting it together in that program or whatever that is. I'm not quite sure. I'm not a programmer myself, but everything seems to be slowly coming together with every AMA they do here.
Yeah, I'm really impressed with how much information we're going to get with every type of attack, and for vulnerable and resistant. So as we're, let's say, in a battle and I'm seeing Grill get hit with certain attacks, it's going to provide a lot of valuable information that we can use in a raid to adjust in battle. It's going to be fun. All right, next clip.
Next one, Hugo here talks about some of the art updates they've done in this last month plus here. So let's roll it.
Been working on a lot of armors recently. Like Ryan made a lot of cool design for a lot of legendary, epic, ancient kind of armor. It's very, very super cool. It's a lot of ideas. Eventually, we have to implement probably in this biome more statues, research, exploration. I've been working also on runes kits for Ardethorn zone. So this is some 3D based sketches I made on Blender, just to explore what could look like an ancient wall, an ancient building. It's not specific, any specific building. It's more like a generic kit. And I work also on some gravestones for the 10 by 10 plots. So I had different ideas that I share with the team already. Some fallen tower, stones and grass, and just to give an ancient storytelling. You can see some pirate stones inside the cliff around the sea. That's pretty cool. He was also working on some armor shop, so we made a lot of proposition for the house.
Yeah, here you can see where we're going to go with some of it. So you guys saw the current version is kind of the top left, but this is where it's gonna go. So further updates.
We also explore the query. Before Peter was starting, we had this idea of toxic river inside the quarry, or maybe it could not be in the game, but we had this this kind of props and ramps, and I made 3 or 4 different ones. This one I just made the exterior. This one was the main temple, or the main building for the King's March. Those sketches were for Red Shores. It's another biome, but it's for the phase 2 on continent 1. Aggressive crabs, and everything is red. You have red seaweeds. You have ochre, red stones. Trying to have a pretty creepy vibe for this kind of plate.
So creepy.
Yeah, it was fun. I like the idea of having the light, the lantern. You have some really powerful white light. It's almost like a torchlight, a modern torchlight. So a strong light. It creates a lot of shadows and dramatic light. It's pretty cool to imagine having that kind of vibe or storytelling moment in the game. Yeah, and yeah, that's it. That's it for the concept team.
A lot of amazing stuff there. One of the things I really love that they're doing is all the statues and fallen towers to basically show there's been history. And one of my questions is, how deep is the lore internally? We know they're not going to reveal that much, which is part of the fun. I love that. But is it really fleshed out, or just a bunch of cool looking statues? Have they actually spent the time kind of writing lore and writing history, and then people can unearth that as they play? So that's one big question. Like the cemetery designs, Toxic River, cue up the clear blood. So that's cool. And one interesting comment that he said was Phase 2 Continent 1. So probably not going to show up in the next playtest, but maybe the next one after that. And it sounds like eventually we'll have a lot of continents. And I like the crabs. That whole sunset scene was beautiful. Elam, thoughts?
So again, several different interesting things here. So with regards to continents, on our very, very first video on the load-in screen to Mirandus, for a few seconds you can kind of see what I'm almost guessing is potentially the world map of Mirandus. You see like a bunch of islands. It's only for a few frames, but you can probably go back to that at some point. The other thing is with regards to the armors, they've added many, many more armors. The most common one, the top left of the screen that we're seeing, has the rare, which looked very similar to the top tier armor in the last playtest, which was the Brigandine armor. Now, the most advanced ancient armor looks pretty good, and I do like the fact that you can, assuming you know what the armor is, that you can simply look at someone and know how strong they are per se. And Micah McCarthy said in the past that he wants people to be able to be identified based on just looking at them and say, oh wow, this is someone who's really accomplished something. And the fact that they have so many different varieties and that they're directly correlated by rarity and strength and stuff certainly relates to that. I do like the look of the, in quotes, armor shop, which personally I think is more like a weapon shop considering it only has weapons in it, but that looks pretty good. And then they also mentioned on previous images as well, other than all those tiny little crabs, we did see one image with a really large crab. And the fact that they mentioned that large goblin is the largest thing they put in the game leads me to believe that that really big crab is not in the game. Either that or that large goblin is like really, really, really big. Because that crab was like massive. So I'm interested to see who the next boss is in this upcoming playtest. I was hoping it was going to be the big crab, but you never know based on what we're seeing here. The last thing I want to comment on is in the quarry, they're talking about kind of the toxic river that goes through there. I'm kind of picturing that being potentially like a poisonous river, so I wouldn't be surprised come actual launch if that would be a potential area where a clear blood would potentially have a significant advantage over other exemplars.
Grill?
Yeah, lots of good stuff in there. The shops look great. I agree with you where that last image of the crabs, like I kind of like the idea of this being swarmed by enemies and this like epic battle going on. It's total bloodfest both ways. All the landscapes look good. I do really like Hugo's kind of style of making everything look grand and old. It gives a lot of feel to the world. And I do agree that I'd like to see the lore of the game kind of buried throughout, maybe with some treasure or even just on its own. I'm interested to learn more about kind of the ancient lore of the game itself.
Yeah, hopefully we can find little bits of information in the world that would reveal little parts of the lore, which maybe has clues to treasure or valuable areas. So if they can weave in the lore in the game where you find maybe a scroll and there's information in it. That would be incredible. I think would really add a lot of fun gameplay. All right, next we have some more sexy art. Not really art, but actual. This is a pretty big reveal in my opinion. So cue it up, Grill.
Yeah, this is a clip that I labeled zone and shop porn, and I could watch this on repeat all day, I think.
Mostly been focused on King's March for the tech test, looking at some deeds and plots placements. So we've got some of those spec'd out. We've been moving them around as sort of the terrain is malleable. So kind of just keeping an eye on that. We got some shops in, which you'll see in the video, some interiors, which are pretty cool. Spent some of the month on spotting, and then just the past couple of days I've been working with Jonas on getting the world sim cooked up. So part of that was just me placing some of the tags in the world and seeing that how that system works up. So as this starts coming more to life, we'll have a lot more tags in here. And then after talking to Jonas, it's going to be pretty badass how this is all going to work out. And then also just thinking about how some of the other zones meet up with King's March, and we want to, figure out the topology perspective, making sure the continent is a nice contiguous landmass and it's not kind of segregated in all the zones. As you can see, some of the larger rock formations here are just more of the representation of the zone nearby.
So Brian is the main keeper of this whole area of King's March. We were just all assigned a different section of the map.
Yeah, so I was focused mainly this month on geology, trying to get, the mountains in, all the prefabs placed, and making some new prefabs where needed, and tuning the terrain. Trying to make different areas of the zone seem memorable. And we still are going to make additional caves. We still have additional, like Peter said, a lot of details, and a lot of just tuning all of the final materials and adding the small props and everything in here. But if you definitely check out the world, run around, tell us what
ruins here. So basically just creating a variety of ruins and some design around there for the player to run around. Working off of Hugo's concepts, so it's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, this is the quarry. I still have a lot of work to do in here, but it's so far it's in a good place. I need to make some changes to the different levels there. I thought I would add some walkways across from the thing itself, so to give it more of an impact as the players are walking around and so on.
Yeah, this is the 10 by 10 meter cemetery, or glimpse out in the project, courtesy of Hugo. And this is the armor shop. I presented a couple of layouts to Paul, and he made a mix between them to get the current layout. I've been working with Dylan on the art side to make it look cool. And the shop has multiple display with armor parts and 3 countertops the player can interact with to buy stuff.
Wow, a lot of goodness there. First of all, the shops look amazing. They're holding a lot more material or items than I expected, which is great. King's March sounds like an interesting area. One word he said was prefab, which means that they're building a lot of assets, and there's going to be an acceleration with all the world building as they have all of these assets pre-built that they can just repurpose and reuse. Really love the Grim Reaper statue, which was just shown for a brief moment. And then the 10 by 10 cemetery. I mean, first of all, the cemeteries just look completely different than I had them in my mind, but they're cool. I like it. Yellum, what did you see?
Yeah, so I didn't really picture the cemeteries like that. I was picturing more kind of like burial sites and such, as opposed to more of a monument or something of that nature. As I mentioned previously, the armor shop, it seems more like a weapon shop to me, considering there's not a single piece of armor in it. I recreated all the armor shops within Valheim based on how I figured they were going to be built in Mirandus. And one thing that they did here that I think is quite interesting is they have it more of an open concept even to the outside, even with the larger armor shops. And that's not something I really considered. It is, however, an interesting use of space because it's open to the outside. That frees up a lot of space for people standing. So instead of giving space for people to stand inside to interact with the counter, they can do that also from the outside now. And that gives the interiors of a relatively small building much it makes it much more spacious. And it's not something that I would expected them to do, but a very smart design decision at the same time.
Get me in the world. I want to walk around. It looks amazing. This one, another comment in the armor shop. It was probably my favorite part, or the weapon shop. I hope that the weapon shops, all those weapons we see in there, or any shop, that there will be actual NFTs and not just decorative. And you can see that some places will be well stocked or have some rare stuff.
Yeah, for sure. All right, next clip, in my opinion, is the biggest announcement. They had talked about it a little bit in the previous AMA, and sounds like it's completely confirmed now. So let's roll it, Grill. This is the big one.
Next one is about some Materium earnings
that we're pretty hot on, guys, is that in this next test, you will be able to have more of a direct relationship with Materium. So this is a pretty big lift, but we're targeting it that in this next tech test, it will be live. And as you kill goblins in the world, you will be able to earn Materium that you can spend in this weekly reset or be able to claim as an ERC20. So we're still digging into all of those pieces, parts that we have to build to make that possible, but that's another thing we're targeting. So that's pretty beefy. It'll be up, it'll be live, and you can earn Materium when you play as a game reward and as a thank you.
Huge. So first of all, he said claim or spend. I'm very curious what we could spend it on. That's curious what your thoughts are on that, guys. But basically, and it's a great move from a marketing perspective, because obviously the bull run has begun. So if they get this playtest up end of Q1, early Q2, then at least people will be able to grind and earn during this bull run, because obviously I don't think the full game is going to be live in this cycle. But at least, right now there's a ton of hype and success happening in the Web3 space from Star Atlas and Big Time and Shrapnel, and there's just a lot of great things happening. And I think if Mirandus isn't capitalizing on that, it's a massive loss. So we could see a huge influx of new players come in to go and farm Materium. I think that's what's going to happen. So, Elam, thoughts?
Yeah, so I'm very interested, obviously, in the continuous play. They did mention a few things outside of this clip, that the duration would probably be a week or maybe even a couple of weeks at time, at which point they would reset progress. So even though you're able to be earning Materium, it won't be persistent in the way that, say, the Walking Dead playtest is, where your stats will be added or given upon full launch. And I agree with you. We're still quite far away. Whether or not we actually get a, in quotes, full release towards the end of this cycle is questionable at best. But the fact that you'll be able to earn Materium in game actively is interesting as well. There's a few potential downsides to all that, though. If they're not having the Materium directly connected to the blockchain through GalaChain, then that gives the possibility for exploits, specifically duplication exploits. So I'd be a little worried that would be a risk. The other thing is how much Materium is actually going to be released. Is it going to be, say, a Materium per goblin, or is it going to be, say 1,000 or 2,000 Materium a day, and the amount that the goblins or whatever creature you kill in that day gives you a certain percentage of that, or will be some degree of randomization? I'm really interested to see how that works. And I'm also interested to see whether your Exemplar makes a difference at this early point, at least, whether you kill with say an elf, and that gives you a certain amount of Materium versus a human. Now, in the last playtest, that was not the case. And come launch, it probably will be the case indirectly, as the elves would likely be much stronger. But given the fact that they don't have all of the Exemplar special abilities in, it almost seems to give a significant advantage to the lower tier Exemplars such as humans, especially since it won't be based per Exemplar, but just based on what you're playing. So I can see someone coming into this game with a single, say, in quotes, pit fighter, and making some very good ROI on that potential purchase, especially with these upcoming shipwreck boxes.
The pit fighter glory days are coming. Grill.
Pit fighter straight to S tier. Yeah, no, I'm excited to play and earn, even if it's not much. It'd be the first time. Well, not the first time, but the first time you actually do it from grinding in more of a traditional MMO sense. And I'm definitely curious to see how these pairs are going to work, just based on how Gala has done things in the past.
Yeah. Well, again, let's just all pray to El Verdun that Benny leaves McCarthy alone. All right, we got one last clip, which is incredibly exciting. One of the things we talked about as a guild when we formed was the ability to work with the team to make the game better. And, I think it's one of the most special things about Mirandus is how much they talk to the community. And I think it's a great balance. McCarthy's got an amazing vision that we're all excited about, but they're not afraid to work with people to refine the vision and take it to another level. So let's cue up this clip.
We need to probably get with a small contingent of you guys. Think of it as a micro forum, but maybe people from Everglen or Mirandus Farmers or Mom. We probably need to get 8 to 10 of you in a room, because I think it's going to be the best format to really talk about how ownership and wallet integration and all of that works in relationship to the game. And I'll give you a for instance. Like you have Materium. If you have Materium and it's an ERC 20, obviously you can't be walking around the game and playing with it, right? You could bridge that over to Gala Chain, and we can spend it more freely, because it's just faster, obviously, and the gas fees would be, non-existent. So, like, how exactly does all of this work? What is in your hand? What are in your accounts? What is on your Gala account? What does that Exemplar have? And how all of those things intersect with the chain? And when are your inputs and outputs and exit points for bringing that into the game or the ecosystem? How is that locked? We have a lot of ideas for this, but this is going to be one of those things where I like the idea that we get this next tech test out, that we can meet with a group of you guys to sit there and just brainstorm the crap out of this. So, and then have some proposals that we can give to everyone in the community, and you guys all can kind of look at them, or we can vote on them or something. But it's complex, and we want to do it the right way, and we want to do it in a way that honors what you guys are excited about. So be on the lookout for that early mid next year.
Could you clarify by room? Do you mean like a Skype session room? Or
I mean, physically go somewhere and sit there on dry erase boards, and we can present you stuff and brainstorm stuff and talk about the complexities of some of this. So I don't mean a Zoom call. I mean, like, let's get together. And honestly, man, I think we need like I'd love next year if we had like a Mirandus Con or something, something where we all could get together. I really miss, especially, I miss the tavern from that first Galaverse. I mean, that made me feel like I got a chance to really sit down with you guys, and we were all there and talk about the game. And so I'm kind of desperate for that tavern moment. If we're trying to do something like that, just know we always pick somewhere that, is easy to get to. It's not going to be a multi-sitch. That was not easy to get to.
Exciting. I'm definitely expecting them to send a benefactor's jet to come grab us, right? Grill, opinions on this?
Sounds like fun. I hope they do when I'm actually back home. Everything seems to happen when I'm traveling. I have an uncanny ability of being busy or on vacation or traveling when things are released or coming out or happening. So I'll let you know when I'm going on vacation next, because it'll probably be exactly that day.
ALM, are you going to come from Asia for that?
Probably not. Most of the stuff that they often say that is convenient or it's in good location or it's easy to access and stuff is quite the opposite for me in general. So I would like to be able to do something like that. I do find it kind of interesting that they said 8 to 10 people specifically, just based on what I know from the numbers of the kind of the main people and the 3 guilds or groups that they mentioned as well. And the whole kind of setup seems a little lopsided to me personally. I honestly would prefer something more like a Zoom call than what they're suggesting.
Yeah, maybe they'll do a hybrid where it'll be in person with a Zoom element, which I've done before. It works pretty well.
Yeah, I'd like to be able to like video in.
Yeah. But again, if Benefactor sends his jet for you guys, I'm assuming you'll come, right?
I'm already at the airport.
And it was great AMA. Hopefully they keep them coming every month. Again, if you haven't joined us, mastersofmaterium.com, or in the description down below, you can click our Discord link directly. We're open for everyone. So if you're an Exemplar owner, even if you don't own an Exemplar and you want to play Mirandus, join us. We're going to need thousands of players to support all of the assets in MOM. So again, we're open for everyone. Thanks again, guys. Always a pleasure, always fun, and we'll see you on the next one.